Did you hear about the janitor who peed inside his coworker's water bottle and infected everyone with STDs? Imagine this, you clock into work every morning and fill up your bottle using the water dispenser at the office. But little do you know, you're actually drinking someone's urine. This all happened in Houston when employees at a medical office began noticing that the water dispenser had a sour taste and smell to it. This weird taste and smell was going on for days, and mind you, people were still drinking this water despite the nasty smell and taste. But one employee decided that she was done drinking this water, and instead she began bringing her own water from home. Of course, there were days she didn't finish all her water and left the bottle in her office overnight and then drank it the next day. But it wasn't long until this employee began noticing that the water she brought from home also began having a disgusting smell and taste. She finally decided to do something about this when her co-worker offered to make her a coffee and used the water from her bottle, and they noticed that it smelled like urine. So at this point, these two employees spoke to the doctor at the facility and they agreed to do a urine test on the water dispenser, and it came back positive. Now that they knew someone was urinating in the water dispenser, they wanted to find out who this psychopath was, so they set up a hidden camera in the office, and you won't believe what they saw. They caught the janitor, 53-year-old Lucio Diaz, unzip his pants, put his thing inside the bottle, and urinate inside. He then put the cap back on the bottle and returned it to the same spot it was. The employees went straight to the police, and when Lucio was questioned, he admitted to everything and said that he did it out of malicious intent. But this horror story doesn't even end there, because Lucio then told police that he had a sickness. When police asked him to elaborate, he told them that he had STDs and chlamydia. 13 employees had a panel of STD tests performed a few days later, which came back positive for herpes, which is something they never had. This evil man was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, but he was only sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Interesting facts you never knew. The last one will shock you. Research shows that dog owners would rather hang out with their dogs instead of go out and hang out with other people. Only 1% of people can do this. None of you can completely spell your name one word at a time in the comments below without being interrupted. Human sleep is much more bizarre than we think. Not sleeping can lead to death faster than not eating, according to research. And one night of sleep loss requires 4 days to recover. Would you rather lose 2 of your fingers or kiss the third person who appears when you click share and then more? Sometimes houses in Montana get buried by tumbleweeds. If you Google cha-cha slide and click on the microphone on the right, your Google page will actually start doing the cha-cha slide. Go try it and then come back and let me know if it worked. Before we get to the last fact, please support my page by following me for more interesting facts every day. Scientists were able to implant fake memories into the brains of snails, allowing them to recall experiences they've never had. This could be a good thing or a bad thing for the future of human biotechnology.
This is the scariest dinosaur that ever walked the earth. Most people probably think that the Tyrannosaurus Rex is the meanest, scariest dinosaur out there. But that's actually wrong. This is the Spinosaurus, and it lived 100 million years ago. The Spinosaurus was way bigger than the T-Rex, measuring at over 50 feet long and weighing anywhere from 7 to 20 tons. These guys are most known for the 5-foot tall spine on their back, as well as their 6-foot long alligator-like mouth. And just when you thought this couldn't get any worse, in 2014, scientists discovered that many Spinosauruses spent a lot of time underwater, meaning that if this thing was chasing you down, there would be nowhere to hide.
The first person to live forever is already alive, at least according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, who explains it with irrefutable logic. It starts with someone that was born in like the past year or so. Our test subject, call him Johnny Boy. The reason Johnny or any of us age is because our cells are constantly dividing, making fresh copies of our DNA in each new cell. Our DNA is packed into chromosomes, and since DNA duplication isn't perfect, the tips of these chromosomes are slightly trimmed on every replication. Sorta like making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. The quality slightly degrades each time. To protect against this, our chromosomes have something called telomeres on their tips, which essentially contain junk DNA data that we can afford to lose. But even these telomeres are finite. They get shorter and shorter on every duplication until at some point they're fully gone. Then the cell stops dividing, gradually loses its function and withers away. The more this happens in our cells, the more we age, and our bodies experience age-related characteristics. Scientists like David Sinclair are currently getting really close to reversing this process in human cells. cells. He's developed what he refers to a chemical cocktail that can reprogram the way our cells are read to sort of fill in the blanks from these imperfections in our DNA replication. The science behind it is quite extensive, and he ran tests on lab mice that were incredibly successful. Having mice born at the same time with one looking visibly older than the other says that human trials are planned to start within the decade, and it's just a matter of time before we start seeing success in that. So where does this live forever come from? Obviously, the first version of this cocktail won't be perfect and may extend human life to, let's say, 150 years. Now remember our test subject Johnny Boy? In 20 years, he'll be 20, at which time we're almost guaranteed to be undergoing human trials at the very least, if not already publicly available. This life potion is given to Johnny so that he can live until 150. The claim states that by the time Johnny is 40, we're almost guaranteed to make enough advancement to double the anti-aging cocktail so that now he can live till 300. 20 years later, when he's 60, the potion will be improved so that he can live till 500 years old. By the time he's 80, he can live till 1,000. These numbers are all arbitrary, but the general principle still holds up. Even if we start seeing diminishing returns in the improvements of this concoction, Johnny has already hacked his way into living forever. He can already live till 1,000 at this point, so even if it takes 100 more years to improving the medicine to living till, say, 2,000 years old, he'll live until then and take it, constantly outliving the improvement curve of anti-aging until they've cracked the code to the million-year potion, at which point Johnny Boy is essentially immortal, which means one of two things absolutely must happen in our future. One, we colonize other planets, or two, we stop having babies. If people are living forever and no longer dying, our population will continue to grow and just grow and grow, at which point we either need more space to put people, like other planets, or we gotta stop making people. So unless we want to sterilize the entire human race, living forever probably isn't a good idea until we figure this multi-planetary business out.
This bird eats almost nothing but bones. This is a lammergeier and it's a scavenger, meaning it eats animals that are already dead. But instead of going for meat like everyone else, this Satan sweetie goes for bone and bone marrow. Since they have stomach acid that'll probably make your hand see through, they can swallow entire bones without flinching. But if a bone is too big, the bearded vulture will pick it up, fly up to 500 feet in the air, and then drop it down to the rocks below. If it hits somebody and takes them off the census, that's just a bonus. Since bone marrow is like crack to this bird, they'll drop the same bone from the sky up to 50 times just so they can get a taste. And sometimes the lammergeier will violate tortoises by literally airdropping them hundreds of feet until their shell shatters. According to legend, Greek playwright Aeschylus became a Twitter bio after a vulture airdropped a tortoise from the clouds right onto the back of his head. Okay, double homicide. Also, this flying Grim Reaper isn't a natural redhead. They get that color from rubbing iron oxide rich soil on themselves like war paint. They do it on purpose, we just don't really know why. Also, the biggest ones have a wingspan of more than 9 feet. For reference, this guy's is a 7'3". Moral of this video, dinosaurs never left, they've been here the whole fucking time.
Bone-chilling animals you'll be glad to hear are extinct. Part 1. The titanoboa was the largest snake to ever exist. They were over 50 feet long, 2,500 pounds, and killed their prey by squeezing them like a modern-day boa constrictor. The Gigantopithecus roamed Asia until about 100,000 years ago. They were over 10 feet tall, but luckily, they are vegetarians. However, this doesn't mean that they didn't use their massive strength against humans who tried to attack them. The Arthropleura lived 300 million years ago. They're very similar to modern day centipedes or millipedes, however they grew up to 9 feet tall and had little to no predators. The Mosasaurus were massive sea creatures that grew up to 50 feet long and had heads very similar to crocodiles. They had hundreds of rows of very sharp teeth, making them the most dangerous sea predators. Like and follow if you want to see part 2.
Interesting facts you never knew. The last one is shocking. When the inventor of the Frisbee, Walter Morrison, died, he was cremated and turned into a Frisbee. If your friendship lasts more than 6 years, psychologists claim it'll last a lifetime. Your true love is the second person that appears when you click on share, slide all the way down, and click more. In 2018, a pig in Australia stole 18 beers from a campsite, got drunk, and then tried to fight a cow. No one can comment under this video and get 0 likes. If there is a comment with 0 likes, that means they are the chosen one. Dysania is the state of a person having difficulty getting up in the morning. Want to know that one thing you're missing right now? Type I miss or I need down below and let your keyboard finish the sentence. Before the last fact, support me by clicking on the follow button for more interesting facts every day. A woman named Valentina Vasilieva and her husband Fyodor had the record for having the most children ever, 69 of them. She gave birth to 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets, for a total of 27 births. I don't know how she did that.
This true story about a young boy's paranormal experience will freak you the fuck out! And if you don't believe in the paranormal, just wait. So a 4-year-old boy who lived in the U of the K, the land of the sheep, had an apparent imaginary friend, a tall, kind, older woman, and he would commonly sit on the family steps of the home talking to her late at night. But the parents didn't see anything wrong with this. To be honest, it's pretty normal having an imaginary friend at this point. However, one day the young boy goes to his parents and tells them something that she told him to tell them. It was an address, a location, which no one in the immediate family recognized. However, a couple days later, while drinking a nice cup of tea with a longtime family friend, they were informed that this address was the house in which the dad's mother had grew up in as a child, because unfortunately she had passed away long before the 4-year-old was born. Now let me stress, this house hadn't been visited in decades. The boy nor the parents had ever gone there in their entire lives. So how did he know the address? So now the family are kind of freaked out. They're thinking, what is living in our house? Because there's no way the 4-year-old should have ever known this, because even the parents hadn't ever gone to that house. Oh, and one more thing about the story. The 4-year-old boy was actually me. You won't believe what happened next. Elon!
If it's brown, get down. If it's black, fight back. And if it's white, yeah, no, you're going to be seeing the light. I don't think a lot of people realise how much bigger and dangerous polar bears are than any other type of bear. Polar bears are the biggest land carnivore that we have on the planet. The females can get to around 8 feet tall, and the males can get to around 10 feet tall. So 2 feet taller than a grizzly bear on average. But there have even been records of polar bears getting to around 12 feet tall. And before you bring out the Kodiak bear, yeah, polar bear's still bigger. And because polar bears live in the North Pole, they are what we call a hypercarnivore. And this is because practically no fruit or vegetation grows in the Arctic. So they have to survive off only meat with no guarantee of when they'll see a next meal. And this is why if they see humans, they will just go up and start eating us. They don't even see us as a threat. And if you think you can hide from these guys in the water, you are mistaken, as if the water didn't kill you first by freezing you to death. They can swim, and they've been recorded swimming for days. They can also run at pretty fast speeds of 25 miles an hour. They are also not actually white, as their skin is black and their fur is translucent. It just reflects the ice. Reflects light, sorry. Thank you for watching another one of my silly animal facts videos. Polar bears are one of my favourite animals, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Jeffrey Epstein is still hiding plenty of secrets. So let's talk about a big one. So we all know Jeffrey Epstein. Some of us are going to know the former Attorney General Bill Barr under Donald Trump. But did you know that Bill Barr, the former Attorney General of the United States' father, Donald Barr, was the headmaster of a prep school in New York City while Jeffrey Epstein was employed there? Yes, here's Jeffrey when he was a teacher at this school. It was called the Dalton School in New York City, and Donald Barr, Bill Barr's father, was the headmaster at the time. Now, obviously, it's disturbing looking back that this man would have hired this pedophile to work around teenagers, but now we have to talk about something really strange. So, Donald Barr was an author, and in the year 1973, while he was working as the headmaster, published it wasn't just any novel though, it was called Space Relations. And the plot of the book was as follows, quote, Space Relations is a science fiction novel about a planet ruled by oligarchs who engage in child sex slavery. I'm not making this up. You can buy a copy of this book yourself and read it. I've read passages from it, and this is very disturbing stuff. So Donald actually published that book while he was the headmaster of the school, at the same time that Jeffrey Epstein was there. And then decades later, Bill Barr, Jeffrey Epstein's former employer's son, would lead the prosecution against him when he was arrested, as he was the United States Attorney General at the time. If you still think these are all coincidences, I honestly just don't know what to tell you. Now, interestingly enough, when the Epstein thing really started in 2019, people asked Bill Barr to step away from the case, but he refused. You see, Bill Barr had already had experience covering up the Franklin scandal in Omaha, Nebraska, which we can talk about in a later video because it's a lot of info. But yeah, this is just incredibly shocking stuff that I don't see anybody really talking about to this day. And if you want to hear me rant more about topics like this and do extremely deep dives, check out my channel on YouTube, The Conspiracy Files, or the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Horrifying facts about demons part 2. Click the plus, drop a like, tag a friend, or you might become haunted. If you fall asleep on your back, you actually have a higher chance of having sleep paralysis. Women actually have more nightmares than men do. 12% of people actually dream entirely in black and white.
The United States has just dropped a metaphorical nuclear bomb on India. Because right before the weekend kicked off, Trump signed an order that sent the tech industry into chaos. He announced a $100,000 fee on a visa for skilled foreign workers. And if you look here, India represents a staggering 70% of those approved on this visa. In fact, the entire rest of the world combined doesn't even come close. It's called the H-1B visa, and it was created in 1990 in response to a labor shortage in America. And since then, applications have been steadily growing. In fact, approvals for the H-1B peaked in 2022 when over 442,000 were accepted in 1 year alone. Now remember, those on the H-1B visa are educated and talented and have a median wage of $118,000. You need to hold either a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or higher. Because of that, they contribute an estimated $86 billion annually to the economy and pay a combined $35 billion in taxes. However, Trump argues that there's a big downside to this. He says that Americans often lose out on job opportunities because large American employers like Amazon, HP, etc. take advantage of these visas and hire foreign workers that are willing to accept lower wages. But not everyone agrees with Trump. Many point out that some of America's best and brightest were once on these visas and then eventually turned into CEOs of Google, Microsoft, Zoom, Tesla, hell, even the First Lady of the United States. And not only that, but there's also the argument that many of these employers turn to these visas because they can't find enough qualified American workers to fill the same job. But the question is, in 5 years' time, what do you see happening? More American jobs filled by Americans, or a slump in American competitiveness and innovation?
This is Celeste Rivas, and if you haven't been following her story, let me catch you up. In 2024, 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez was reported missing from her hometown of Lake Elsinore, California, and her whereabouts remained a mystery until earlier this month when her remains were found inside the trunk of a Tesla. Police received a report of a foul smell coming from this car, which had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills in California. Neighbors said the car had been there for about a month, so police went, inspected it, brought it to the impound lot, and upon inspection, human remains were found in the trunk. They had been wrapped inside a bag, and authorities believe that the body was put in the trunk about 5 days before it was towed to the impound lot. The victim was identified as 15-year-old Celeste, and her cause of death has been listed as deferred, meaning the investigation, testing, and autopsy is ongoing. It has been discovered that the vehicle was registered to singer David, whose legal name is David Anthony Burke. A search warrant was executed at a Hollywood Hills address associated with David, and police said several items of evidence were recovered and that investigators are following several leads. However, 20-year-old David has not been charged or named a suspect. He has been on tour and he has since canceled all his remaining tour dates. The investigation into Celeste's death is ongoing. There are rumors that they were together, that David got her pregnant, and tons of other crazy theories. But we don't know if any of this is true yet. Police have not come out with any of this information, and for now, the investigation remains ongoing. There was a candlelight vigil for Celeste last night, and dozens of people showed up in support. Rest in peace, Celeste, and hopefully you will be getting justice.
Hi, I'm Kim. This is the Woodburn family murders. Mark Gago used knives, an axe, a sword, and guns to murder 4 family members in a gruesome rampage. On January 19, 2020, police received a call from Pamela Bremer at a rural home in Southern Oregon. On the call, Pamela told the dispatcher, "I have got the baby protected. Nobody's touching the baby." She told the dispatcher that her son had broken somebody's neck and that she needed somebody now. 5 minutes later, Mark Gago, her son, threw a knife at her. She was holding the baby. Police didn't enter the house until an hour after the call was made. They finally went in. They found 64-year-old Pamela and 9-month-old Olivia Gago brutally murdered. Mark had also murdered his stepfather, 66-year-old Jerry Bremer. He also killed his girlfriend, 31-year-old Shayna Schweitzer. Police said they found Shayna dead with a bloody shovel at her feet. Pamela and baby Olivia were on the floor nearby with massive head trauma. They walked down a dark hallway to find an overturned wheelchair and the headless body of Jerry Bremer. One officer told detectives that it looked like somebody had a blower with, red paint and just coated the walls. There was a glimmer of hope when they heard the voice of an 8-year-old girl.
On August 18th, 2010, Ben McDaniel, who was 30 years old, walked to the end of the pier, put on all of his diving equipment, and jumped in the water. He slowly descended 115 feet and came to a stop right in front of a very famous underwater sign. The sign very clearly tells anybody who sees it, do not go any farther unless you are absolutely certain this is the right thing for you to be doing. If you go farther, you're probably going to die, like the 300 other people that have died doing this particular activity. He swam right past that sign and went 300 feet to the very famous underwater locked gate. Now, the only people that have keys to this are extremely experienced divers, and even they don't typically go into this area because it's so dangerous. Ben was not one of the very experienced divers that was given a key, but he still desperately wanted to get to the other side of the gate. So he's sitting there yanking on the gate, and he's getting himself kind of pushed inside halfway through the gate, and he can't quite get it open. And another diver saw him doing this and was actually concerned that Ben was going to get trapped on the gate itself and would just drown on the gate. And so this diver comes over and uses his key, and maybe against his better judgment opened it, thinking that that was better than him getting stuck on the gate. Ben turns to look at him, gives him a nod, thank you, and he, on his own, swims into one of, if not the single most dangerous underwater caves in the whole world. It's called Vortex Spring Cave. From the locked gate, this cave extends another 1,600 feet and goes down to a depth of 310 feet. The majority of this section of the cave is mapped, but there are sections that are not fully explored because they're so narrow where you have to literally take off your gear, wriggle through a hole, pull your gear through and put it back on. All the while you're barely holding onto your mouthpiece. And so really the full extent of this section of the cave is not known. While we don't know exactly what Ben did when he went through that gate and entered into this extremely dangerous cave, we do know that he didn't come out again. And after a couple of days and no one had seen him, they launched this massive search for him, and they combed as much as they could of inside of that cave, but there were sections that they were just not prepared to go search. And so he was never recovered. All they ever found were 2 of Ben's dive bottles.
I apologize for the jump scare, but the video at the end is way worse. This is Lucy, a giant fake Loch Ness monster that was actually put in Loch Ness to trick people. In 2005, a whole bunch of Scottish people, they decided to prank people in Loch Ness and make this giant 30-foot long, this is so disgusting for people with submechanophobia, aka myself, and yeah, this is disgusting. They made it in 2005 and they tricked people, and they put this thing out there before sunrise. They put it in there at night. To scare people, and this is what it looks like. And at daytime, people were like, oh my god, the Loch Ness monster is real, and it's not. It was just this monstrosity. Here's another photo of it underwater. That is disgusting. And I know the Loch Ness monster isn't real, but like, would you consider it a dinosaur? Would you put it in the same category as a dinosaur? Because I'm definitely tagging this under dinosaur. And yeah, this is kind of what, like Nessie looks like. No. This is some guy that worked on it in the water with it, and that's how big it is in comparison, which it's 9 meters long, which is around 30 feet. It's disgusting. The full documentary about the building of it and the tricking of the people is actually on YouTube. It's about an hour long. It's called Loch Ness Monster, The Ultimate Experiment. It is fascinating. This is what bro looks like. Watch this video and let me know what you're thinking. And is this freaky or not?
A mom was accused of murdering her precious little 3-year-old girl pictured here a few days ago. And reportedly the mom has just died while she was in custody. So 32-year-old Lauren Ingrid Flanagan, who is pictured here on the left, was accused of killing her 3-year-old daughter. But Lauren was recently found unresponsive in her jail cell at Brisbane Women's Correctional Center, and this was just days after she was arrested. She was found unresponsive on Friday, May 30th. This was in Australia. It was said that officers did provide immediate assistance to Lauren before she was transported to a local hospital and then admitted into the intensive care unit. She ended up dying tonight on Sunday, June 1st. There's now an investigation into her death. Reportedly, Lauren was a mom of 3 children, and she was accused of fatally stabbing her 3-year-old little girl named Sophia. Sophia was her oldest daughter. She stabbed her in the front yard of their home in Moore Park Beach. This was on Monday, May 26th, so just under a week ago. Authorities received several calls from neighbors about the stabbing, but unfortunately, the little girl was deceased when emergency services found her, and that was right before 5 p.m. that afternoon. Lauren was then taken into custody and charged. A knife was also seized that police say was the murder weapon. There were also said to be 2 other children who were ages 1 and 2 at the home at the time of the murder, but luckily they were not harmed. They are now being cared for by family members. According to reports, Lauren had posted several odd and eerie messages on social media in the days leading up to killing her daughter. She reportedly shared a video of a woman with bruises on her arm, and it was captured, "Remember your pain as it fuels your purpose." She also included lyrics from the heavy metal music group called Disturbed, their song Prayer, which said, "Another nightmare about to come true will manifest tomorrow, another love that I've taken from you." In other posts on social media, she referenced training like it's war, I'm not sure what kind of training, and being a warrior of light. She then captioned a photo of her children, calling them her divine babies. And other posts were said to have been about past trauma that Lauren had gone through. So it definitely sounds like she had some mental issues going on in the days before she killed her daughter. It's not yet been reported exactly how she died just yet, but it's always just really strange when people die when they're in custody or in jail. For more updates into this case and other true crime news, make sure to hit follow and subscribe over on YouTube.
In a truly awful story, a 5-year-old girl was stabbed and strangled by her own mother whilst heartbreakingly screaming, "But I've been good," in an attempt to save her life. 5-year-old Nicole Town from Texas was killed by her own mother, 37-year-old Melissa, who claimed she didn't want to deal with her anymore. She even admitted to detectives herself that she ignored her daughter's pleas to save her life by crying, "But I've been good," instead telling her not to fight her. Documents show that she drove the child to a wooded area before slitting her throat. When that didn't kill her, she put a plastic bag over her head to suffocate her before strangling her to death. In a turn of events, she actually drove to hospital with Nicole's body in the car. She went inside the hospital and asked a nurse to assist her daughter whose body was hurting, only for nurses to meet a tragic sight, seeing the girl with plastic wrapped around her head and her throat cut. It still remains unclear why she had the child in the first place, as it's reported by local outlets she didn't have legal custody. She has been arrested and her bond has been set at $15 million.
After reading about what happened to Danny Santulli, I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. Last year, Danny was an 18-year-old freshman at the University of Missouri when he suffered severe brain damage from alcohol poisoning during an alleged hazing incident. On October 19th, Danny, as well as all of the other pledges to the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity, were seen on security footage being blindfolded and led downstairs for a ritual known as Pledge Dad Reveal Night. Danny was then pressured to drink an entire bottle of vodka by himself. At 10:55 p.m., Danny is seen collapsing onto the floor, where frat members then carry him to a sofa. A little after midnight, Danny is seen sliding off the couch and onto the floor. 30 minutes later, a few frat members found Danny unresponsive and lips blue, but instead of calling 911, they pick him up and load him into a car, but not before dropping him. So they drove him to the University of Missouri Hospital, but he was already in cardiac arrest. Thankfully, he was resuscitated, but Danny spent the next 6 weeks in the ICU. He's back home with his family now, but he will need care for the rest of his life. He completely lost his vision, and he's in a wheelchair, unable to walk or talk. Seems to be a clear case of severe hazing to many, but so far, the Boone County Prosecutor's Office won't enforce the state's anti-hazing law. In fact, only one frat member was criminally charged in this case, and it was 2 misdemeanors for supplying alcohol to a minor. The University of Missouri has ejected the frat from campus and has sanctioned 13 frat members over that incident, but Danny's family wants criminal hazing charges to be brought. An online petition was created to hopefully ensure that this happens and that the case is investigated properly. The link is in my bio if you'd like to sign.